Hi, it's Ray from Pro Shaper Workshop in Charlton, Massachusetts. We're back on this Jaguar, the 150 front left door for a Roadster. We made this pattern, the paper pattern, in the last installment, or maybe it might have been the first installment, and that's going to index right with this line which stayed on there. And we've totally derusted the door. There's a few spots still in the front that we have to get. We used the Rust 911 and gave it a second dose on this panel here. This has the front hinge panel is beat up a little bit. It's got cracked. We're going to probably have to replace that. And there's sandwich rust in between here. There was sandwich rust also in between the skin and this flange on the hinge panel, and the same deal was on the shut panel. There's still a little residual rust we'll have to take that was encapsulated. So a little bit of rust removal still to go. We'll probably dip this end one more time. This end looks pretty good. The rest of it looks pretty decent. And the focus of tonight is now we have really good access to take these dents out. We'll be taking out a few of these dents, probably not all of them, but just to get the idea of how you can now access that by pulling the door apart. Now I've cut a skin to make the bottom skin piece that we're going to make, and the feature of that is these two radiuses. There's a larger radius in the front and a smaller radius in the back here, and that's the taper. From the front fender the radius is wide and it tapers down smaller and smaller as it goes to the rear fender. The rear fender is about that long right here, and the door reflects that, so we have to put that tapered roll in there. And I'll just show you a way to do that. There's a bunch of different ways. I'll maybe show you a couple different ways to do it. But one thing you should always make sure is that you have a lot of extra material. This was the pattern that we made by putting the paper on with magnets, and we've indexed it with a center line here, and these are cut off right at where the end of the skin was, which is a little bit beyond the flange for the hinge and the shut panel. And the radius is going to be somewhere in here. I didn't mark the radius in the paper pattern, but we're going to mark it on here. I have a lot of extra material on both ends. That's what I call cheat room. You need cheat room. And not only do you need cheat room, you also need leverage if you're going to be bending this over a tube or any method that you're going to be forcing it over a fulcrum, and this is going to be the lever, and if you have it short you don't have that leverage. So first thing we're going to do is define the radius values that we need, and this is one way to do it here. We're going to I cut these two little strips of I think it's 20 gauge I used. I probably should have used 19 gauge. I'm going to take that, and this is going to mimic the way the door is going to go over. I'm going to get a chair here. Our goal is to find out how wide that radius is actually going to be when it's plotted out flat. So I'm going to make some magic marker lines here and here, and that to my eye is where, well, let me move that up just a little bit, where the radius starts. So there it is. We're going to eliminate that one. That one's an error, and we'll try to do the same thing in the back here. So there's our start point and our finish point. So I'm just going to take and put a line on here arbitrarily. Line that up with that one, And I'll just bend that nicely around. It'd be sweet if you could do that with the door skin, but it isn't going to work like that. So. Alright, there's our radius value, and I'm going to mark that. So that's the front one. We'll mark that front. Now we can straighten that out. So that's the width of the radius that we need for that one. And now we'll put this one in here. Alright, so that's hugging that really nice with the mark here and the mark here, and we'll mark that one rear. So you can see the difference is at least a ½ an inch difference between the total linear length of the rear radius value and the front radius value. So now we're going to plot those on a piece of metal, which is grossly oversized by about 6 inches in both directions. We can approximately figure out where that's going to lay on here. Let's see. So that's our top line. And our top line here. So I've got extra on the top, extra on the bottom, and I really need it on the bottom because I'm going to need that for my leverage. So I'm going to tick this off here, tick that off there, and I'm going to put a straight edge across there. And that radius is going to happen about right here, so that's where the value is relevant. That's the width of the finished door skin. So this is our front, this is top, this is rear. That's that. There's that one. So if we put that radius in, we have to be very accurate with it in order for it to mate up with these radiuses here. We want a nice tight fit on that, so that if you get the tight fit there, then it will tight fit against your fender, the front fender, and tight fit against your rear fender. So now the question is, how are we going to put that radius in? Well, if you have a roller, that's really not going to help you because that's for a much larger radius. So we have to bend this. I mean, the simplest is you can actually bend this over the bench like this, especially with a blanket on it, and you can induce the radius in that way. Let's give it a shot there. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. What you want to do here is make sure that you don't push too hard on this and cause that to deform. So what we might do is get a couple boards here to push against, and we'll try doing this right on the bench right here. We've got a couple different ways, but we'll try this way. This is the simplest way that most people can do at home without elaborate tools and everything. So let me get some boards, plywood or whatever, to push on there so we don't dent it in. All right, we have the plywood to help with pushing, And the idea here is it's like a step bend, just like you would do in a brake, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, and you start out on this edge, and then you work your way out. So I'm going to hold that plywood like that, and you got to kind of give it a little push. And we'll pull it out a little bit. And this is 19 gauge steel. That's what the door is calling for. That's 1 millimeter thickness essentially. Now whenever you bend like this, it bends a lot easier on the ends. And you see I'm starting to get a little kink over here. We can work these kinks out. That's what that leather slapper will do. And that's not a major concern, but it's always remember that it's harder to bend in the middle of your panel, so you got to put most of the emphasis right in the middle of the panel, meaning pushing from the middle here, trying to bend this section right in here. That's the hardest section in here. The ends bend pretty easy, so we're probably at like 25-30 degrees now. We're coming along good. I'm not saying this is the way I do it. I have a bunch of different ways. I just wanted to do it this way because this is a very realistic way for the average person. A $5 Harbor Freight blanket, which gives you a soft fulcrum, and a soft fulcrum is always very good. Now a lot of people say, well, Ray, why don't you use the rubber band on the English wheel? Well, I don't think you could pull this radius with a rubber band on an English wheel. You can do larger radiuses, but not a tight radius like this. Put your knee into it. This is where some help actually works out too. You got two pairs of hands working on it, it's a lot easier. Mark is busy with the camera, so I don't want him helping me. We'll soldier on. So far it's looking pretty good. Yeah, probably at, let's see, we got to come up to 90, so there's 90, this is 45, we're probably only 30 degrees or so, but it's a nice clean bend. We're not deformed here at all. We can go this way, put this in as the inside piece, and try that. I do have some help. Actually, what I can do without the help, let me try this, is I'll clamp this wood on here with maybe with a 2x4 to give it a little more substance, and then I'll have two hands free to push this board to get to go a little further. So let me get a substantial board, maybe a piece of hardwood. We'll put across here and clamp it on. Alright, put a nice piece of hardwood, that should hold that pretty good. Now I can put my two hands in. We'll have to keep readjusting the position of it, otherwise we're going to get it strong in one section. And that's not the end of the world if that happens. You can bend it back. Everything's correctable. Oh yeah, so that's a lot easier now. Just kind of give it a little push every. Now I want to slide it in a little. Yeah. I think we're at 45 now. $50 maybe. And we'll turn it around the other way. See what we got. grunting helps. All right. I'll loosen that and pull it out a little bit more. My knees are protesting with a little cracking. We'll put it around the other way now. So there's our results so far. Well, we're pretty good. Let's see. So we got to go up to here. We're beyond 45 now. And the bend is looking really good. It's a little kinky right here, but we can work those out real easy. There's no kink in here. And it looks pretty good. Now I've forgotten which way I had it in there clamped. So let's see what way it will be more advantageous to put it in. Let's see. Either way, I think. I think I gotta just hang it out a little more here. Get another 10 degrees on each end, and that should do it. The lesson always is it never happens as fast as you hoped it would. If it does happen fast, it's not a good job. It generally comes out less than perfect results. We're trying for high quality here. If we make a mistake, meaning we get it too strongly bent in the wrong spot, we can fix it. Worst case, we can get another piece of metal. It's not the end of the world. And I'm doing it in a very simple method that anybody at home can do. I generally use a pipe. Maybe we'll go over there and let Mark show you the bending pipes that we have here. So it's a little bending tool for making radiuses that I made up a long time ago. We're on wheels, we can roll around. I have a solid bar here that's reinforced with this piece of half-inch stock, I believe. That's like 3" by 1/2". And that makes sure that it doesn't bend. That I think it's a 1¼ diameter bar going across here. So I can put the blanket on here and I can push this way just on it, or I can put a blanket on this larger pipe, a blanket on this one, and then the plywood like this, and I can keep moving it easily. You don't have to clamp it or anything, and I can get a nice bend pushing over on this, and I can taper it by my placement. And then I have adjustability here, so I can bring that pipe in or out. And then if I want to do a bigger radius, like a hood, a 30s hood or something, then I'll use the blankets over this, and then I can lock it in underneath here too. So it's a one-man operation, and it goes pretty quick. And people ask me, why don't I use a rubber band on the top of my English wheels? Well, this is a lot faster. But I mean, that's a commitment of space, and it's not technically that advanced a tool or anything. It's just a bunch of tubes and pipes, or solid round stock, and with a roller base to it. But that's not possible in a lot of two-car garages. It's just a lot of space taken up. So that's why I wanted to do it on the bench. That went good. The little chair was this one of the secrets. So now I'm going to turn it around and get some more off of this end here. Alright, we got it repositioned, and I always say at the class there's always 4, maybe 5 different ways, sometimes maybe 6 different ways, but generally 4 ways are really good. And they all work. And this would probably be the bottom of the bucket way. You know, it might be the 6th way to do it. And you can see that we're getting some really nice results here, so you can't complain about it. I think that's almost it. Let me eyeball it. No, it looks like I got a 2.5 more degrees in a few minutes. I got my micrometer on it. That should do it. Now, if it all worked out well, it should look good. And in a perfect world, it'll fit good. You can see with that extra leverage really helps out. There's our top. And we look down here, and we're looking pretty good in here. There's no kinks. At the back here, there's a little bit of kinks. In the front, there's little kinks. But most of that's going to be cut off anyways, or that's where it flanges over. This bottom section looks pretty good. But overall, we got a really nice bend. Now, proof is in the pudding. So let's see how it fits. Doesn't look bad. Looks pretty good. We'll have to do a little slapping up in this end here because it's right here and maybe right here too. We'll slap that. The bend went into here and we want to bring it in just a little bit. So overall that's pretty good. So that's all I wanted to do on this skin tonight. The next part of this would be first adjusting this a little bit with some slapping, and then we're going to have to locate it, and what we'll do is, this is a right angle edge right here. That door shut line is 90 degrees, so we can lay that out really nice, get that homed in on the shut pillar, the hinge pillar, and then with that homed in, meaning we'll tip it 90 degrees and then come down, and the rest of it's going to be flanged on. We're not going to flange it, we're just going to bring it up against and make sure that line is all nice and straight, and then we'll lay this line out, and then we'll verify it with our patent after, and then we can do all the trims where this is going to made up with this. But for the rest of the video, I'm going to just do a little bit of dent removal here. We'll work out a few more dents on this door, and there'll be a lot of repetition because there's so many dents in it, but we'll just take 1 or 2 out, and you can see that process. We've shown in a bunch of our other videos, but we might have some new people in that haven't seen it. And if you haven't seen it before, we do have a lot of dent repair videos with using the shrinking discs, but we're going to be doing it on this panel here. So let's identify the worst culprit, and it looks like right here, and that's plenty accessible. And we'll put a straight edge across it and monitor what we're fighting here, see how deep that dent is. It looks like it is going to have some stretching because there's one sister dent to it too right there. Those are pretty good little impacts, so there's probably extra area there that will have to definitely be shrunk down. So we put that on there, and that thing's down about 3/16 of an inch and about 1/8 of an inch there. So we'll circle them, and we'll see if we can bring those up quickly. So that's a gross area, and here's the more specific area here. And we'll take what I call my bar of soap dolly. I use this probably the most. and I got to get a chair that's a little more user-friendly. A height adjustable chair is a major asset in the shop. It's just too much work for your back to be leaning over this all the time. So this gives me a pretty good range of seating positions. So I'm going to take and knock these up a little bit. And this again is the fulcrum, this is the lever, and if you have the light behind you, which I have, every time you hit it and it impacts on the dolly, it'll leave a little shiny footprint. This is the surface from the rust remover, the Rust 911 remover, and when I hit it with the slapper and the dolly interfaces with the slapper, it leaves this nice little shiny footprint, and I can walk it around with very easily. So that one's just about out. It's a little proud, I can see that now, so that shows that there's a little stretch there. Let's put that straight edge across. It should rock a little bit. We had a 3/16 hole there, and now we're positive. So that'll need the shrinking disc. That brought that up pretty good. We had about 1/8 of an inch there. We're a little positive there now too. So what I'm going to do is, there's a little bit of paint left in where that dent was. I'm going to take a Scotch-Brite, round Scotch-Brite, and I put it on a little 2-inch hook-it pad, and I'm going to clean this up with the Scotch-Brite. Oh, I got a big dent right here. I should probably get that one too. I didn't see that. You can see if you were trying to take that out before, you only had this little window, and it's very difficult to get your arm in there. So the options you have are, this case here, we had to take the bottom of the door off because it was so rotted. But a lot of people freak out all the time. I can't get access to it. Well, it's not the end of the world to cut this out and then re-weld that panel in. And that gives you full access. You can take a cut-off wheel and just carefully cut that off, and before you cut it off, you can have a little strip of metal with two holes over here, and that'll index it all back together again. A couple over here and a couple on both ends and in the middle. And you clip those back on, and that will keep the gap from whatever you'd used on the cutting wheel. So it'll pull up a little bit, but if you do a couple welds, let them cool down and solidify, and then hammer them, that will pretty much lock it. So there's a way around everything. So it's not the end of the world if you don't have access. Sometimes you have to make the access. So, all right, so now let's clean this up so we can see the surface a little better. Oh, there's a little dent over here too. Let me get that one out. There's dents everywhere on this thing. All right, so that's a lot better. Oh, we got one over here too. As I spoke before, if we had sandblasted this, we wouldn't see these forensics. And the forensics here are, somebody took a grinder, and there's heavy grind marks here on this right now. Now, we can show you this over here. One of my students brought in a 55 Chevy front fender, and this was sandblasted. and it's such a it's almost like stipple dyes in my shrinker. It's so beat up from that sandblaster. So when you rub your hands on it, it's hard to feel it right because it's so coarse, and that's why I hate sandblasting. Now, this was used, a real coarse sand was used on this, and it's just really rough as heck. And they probably warped it too. This has an unusual rust out deal. It's rusted out where the trim piece was, and my student made this panel and put it in, and now that's all going to be smoothed out and planished and then shrinking disc. That was the piece that was in here, so he's going to get that one all done, and then he'll do this one. But it's an unusual spot to rust, but this is really wild because usually these 55 Chevys rot out really bad on the headlight brow right here, and there's no inkling of rust, and no pinholes, nothing. And you can see all the when they stamp panels. A stamp panel car oftentimes has some really wild features in it, and you won't see this in a coach-built car so much, that has that sharp lines and little coves and stuff like that. It can be done, but it's a lot of work. But in stamping, this is how they get their corporate identity, by the front end and the back end of the car, and they always usually put a lot of character into your front and the back. And the 55 was a icon car design. So let's go over here. We're going to get the Scotch-Brite and clean that up. Let me get that Scotch-Brite. Alright, so there's that 2-inch hook and loop interface with these are little Scotch-Brite buttons that we made a little die, and we punch them out of a Scotch-Brite pad. Yeah, there's the scratches from the grinding, and that's really uncalled for. You really don't need to do that. It's damage to the skin, but you know, a lot of people say that's tooth for the Bondo, but you really don't need Bondo if you take out the dents. So there's no need for it. It's a scar, and it's there for the life of this car. So let's put some. You can see that Scotch-Brite is real gentle with the surface, and now we're going to put magic marker on here, and we're going to run the shrinking disc, and that'll give us a better idea of where we're at on this. Alright, and a lot of people will say, well, why don't you use Dykem? Well, Dykem can spray on really easy, and it gets all over everything. This I can localize it to right where I want it. The magic marker does not like a sandblasted surface. It just kills the magic marker really quickly. So I've given this whole surface a coating. This leaves a nice little sheen into it, and you can actually see all the low spots and stuff really good just from that sheen. So now we'll take and run the disc on it and see what the disc tells us. We're not shrinking, we're just observing with the disc now. It's apparent now this door was parked at the end of a golf ball driving range, golf driving range. It's been impacted so many times it's just ridiculous. Now, as you can see, if Mark can get the close-up there, maybe I get my shadow out, the disc wears off that really thin coat of the magic marker dye, and all the low spots show up beautifully after running the disc on there. We're not doing any shrinking because we only built up probably maybe 120 degrees of heat or so, maybe 140. And now we're going to get that dolly in here. And all the footprints show up really nice, as you can see. So all we're going to do is head for those little lows and watch for our footprints. Keep the footprints inside the lows. Now this is the nice thing about the shrinking disc too, because if you do err on the side of putting too much area in, meaning stretching it back out too much, we're doing two things. We're setting the arrangement with this dolly and the slapper, meaning the arrangement is pushed down right now. We're pushing it back up, but in the process, because of the impacts, we might be thinning the metal and stretching it a little bit, and it pops up. And that's where the shrinking disc can get you out of that trouble really quickly, because whatever metal is high will attract more heat, and it'll push back into itself and actually thicken, and you'll be back to factory condition, minus the scarring, the scarring from the grinder, earlier grinder. There's no need or requirement to put any Bondo or any heavy filler or anything other than maybe a thick coat of primer, build primer. But even that, you can get it absolutely perfect if you take your time. And when we do our weld here, it'll be the same deal, because you're going to get shrinkage from the weld. And you have to work out the shrinkage, and in the process of working out the shrinkage you might stretch it a little bit, and there's where the disc comes in. And if you do a nice clean TIG weld, your heat affected zone is only about 3/4 of an inch wide, and you add rod, you're going to be positive, meaning there's a little bit extra material in the top. You're going to grind it a little bit on the bottom, work it out, and then you're going to shrinking disc it and find all your highs and lows, and when you're done, that seam should just totally disappear. You won't even see it. This is restoration quality work, which means you're trying to restore the car to its original condition as good or maybe even better. If you're doing repairs, that means that you are fixing the door, but you might not make the repair such as perfect as a restoration level quality. And in the repair world, you might skim coat the whole thing, and it looks okay. And sometimes that's what you have to do because of the money element. The customer doesn't want to pay if you're doing it for somebody, or it's your car and you just don't want to spend 3 or 4 days straightening this all out. So the options are up to you, you know. It's so easy to see those little footprints, and they just guide you. Now a lot of people want to get the bullseye pick. Oh, why don't you get the bullseye pick? Well, the bullseye pick won't even fit in there. As you can see, there's only a little 4-inch gap here. You can't get a bullseye pick in here. So if you bought the 12-inch bullseye pick and the dent is 13 inches in and you need the 14-inch or the 15-inch bullseye pick, if you had the whole array of bullseye pick from 12 inches to 36 inches, it's not going to do you any good. Your bullseye pick is right here, your right arm and your left arm. That's your bullseye pick. You don't need those things. There's a lot of gimmicky tools out there, and you got to be careful of gimmicky tools. Do bullseye picks work? Yeah, they sort of do. I've used them a couple times. I've really not been happy with them, but maybe some people get good results with them. More power to them. All right, now we'll coat this up again and hit it with the disc again and see what the disc tells us this time. Remember, the disc is not abrasive at all. It will gall if you don't have this interface, the interface being the magic marker. It acts as the lubricant and also the high and low indicator. The lubricant aspect of it is super important. You can see the dents now have gotten smaller and smaller. They're just little spots now where the surface anomaly exists. We might be a little bit high here. That's where that major dent was, and we might be a little bit high here. And we didn't get enough heat yet on that panel, so we don't have to worry about spraying it with water yet. So we're going to just keep continuing. As you get proficient in it, you have an innate sense of where your hand is too. But all you got to do is just watch those little footprints. The initial hit can be really easy, and I call that finding myself. Then I can hit it a little hard. Generally, restoration is fixing rust spots and fixing dents, and usually fixing gross errors that were done early in the life of the car by incompetent body men. Alright, so that's 2 cycles. I can feel a few highs here. So I'll let the disc run a little longer now. But I'm going to coat it again. Let me get this little spot right here. I'll coat it again and then we'll take another reading here. We might not get it to perfection tonight, but I think you got the idea. It's just cycle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, until it's done. Now, after we get all the lows up, we're going to have a few of those spots where there was stretching that are going to be high. And now, the way we address those is we'll just dwell on them a little bit longer with the disc. That'll create heat, and then we just cool them quickly, and they will shrink right down. So the heat causes them to go up. We're pushing on it like that, and then we take the heat away, and boom, it'll go right down. Hit it with the disc again. So I dwelled on those spots that are high a little bit more, and they should cause enough, say we got the little bit of steam to happen, and that'll sink those right down now. That's a lot better. Now we want to get down to room temperature before we take another reading here. It's a little proud still there, a little low over here still. So, but it takes a while for the metal to reconfigure itself, because the metal is actually a grain structure, and it's kind of working around in there, and it doesn't happen instantaneously. So you got to let it cool thoroughly. The water is not magic, the water is just an accelerant. Otherwise we'd have to spend 20 minutes to let this cool to room temperature. It's still got a little residual heat in there. That's getting better now. Now there's some dents up here in the roll. I'm not going to address these tonight. The video is getting a little long right now, so I'm going to have to cut it off and maybe do one more cycle here, and we'll see what it looks like. But you can see that that surface is getting a lot nicer now. You can see that residual damage caused by the grinding. That's actually thinned the metal because metal has been removed here. So get it good and dry before we put the marker on. Hit it with the marker again. And we'll run the disc on it and maybe call it a night. It's after 10 o'clock. We generally work till 10 p.m. every night. So Mark has to get home. He drives an hour to get home. That's dedication. I could be crazy in it too. So there's that glossy surface, and maybe you can pan over that, and it's looking pretty good. There's a few little tiny spots now, but let's see what the shrinking disc says. Remember, we have the shrinking disc in our store, ProShaper.com. That's feeling pretty good. It'll probably be 2 more cycles to get it perfect, but there's no need for showing the whole process on camera. We'll do that, and this has to be finished before we can weld this panel on, so it'll probably be next week before I get some time and be able to finish this door out, the rest of it, and then the next edition will be, actually we probably have to address this issue here. We're either going to repair this shut pillar, the hinge panel, or replace it, and we might repair this reinforcer or replace that too. It depends on after we investigate a little more. So there it is. That's looking pretty good. It's nice and smooth now. We'll put the straight edge across there. That's looking pretty good. A little bit low right there, I can see. So that's got to come up a little bit there. Maybe overshrunk it a little bit. It just takes patience. The skill sets are easily learned. You need a shrinking disc. I'm the inventor of what I call the smooth and safe edge shrinking disc. I've sold thousands of them all over the world. We sell them at a regular basis. And we also made, I'm the innovator that made the small one. The small one gets into the little tight spots. Well, I guess that's it for tonight. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. And Remember to like, subscribe, and share. And this is Ray from Pro Shaper, and metal is clay.